Thanks. Good morning. My name is Ryan Confra. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Genprex, and today I'd like to share with you how we are pioneering gene therapies for large patient populations in cancer and in diabetes. This is our forward-looking statement slide. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but for any of you that are interested more in Genprex or considering an investment opportunity, I'd encourage you to go to our corporate website, genprex.com, read through this. Our slide deck is also on our corporate website, as well as our recent SEC filings that would include all of our risk factors. This is a financial summary slide for us. We are a NASDAQ capital markets traded company under the ticker GNPX. I think the most crucial point on this slide is our cash balance of $38.6 million at the end of 2021, which is a pretty healthy balance going into the 2022 year. So I think this is probably the most compelling slide in the whole deck. It really showcases our key differentials in terms of why we believe we have such significant competitive advantages. So first, we have a unique gene therapy platform that we call Oncoprex, which allows us to take multiple tumor suppressor genes, use it against multiple tumor indications in the body, and can also be used in combination with several drugs. We believe that this is the first systemic gene therapy used in cancer for humans, and our first product candidate is called Recorsa, and we are examining it in lung cancer. We have already demonstrated clinically in 2 clinical trials that Recorsa is well tolerated in humans. We can talk a little bit more about that later. We also have 2 current lung cancer trials that are open for enrollment that got opened earlier this year and last year, and we are addressing very large markets. Lung cancer is one of the leading cancers and significant unmet need. Additionally, our clinical trials are in combination with blockbuster drugs Tagrisso and Keytruda, which make up about $22 billion a year in sales. Each of our clinical trials that are currently open for enrollment have been granted fast-track designations by the FDA. We have world-class academic partners, long-standing history with MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, which is world-renowned for their cancer research. And we have an expanding pipeline. As I said, our gene therapy platform allows us to use practically multiple tumor suppressor genes for various indications, so we have the ability to expand that in the future. However, we've also expanded our pipeline recently to include Recorsa for use in small cell lung cancer and a diabetes program. And then lastly, something that's not on this slide that I'd like to emphasize is over the last 2 years, we've been really rounding out our management team to fill up key spots for our senior leadership team. This is our R&D pipeline. It's broken out into our Recorsa cancer program for lung cancer and a diabetes program at the bottom. As this shows, there were 2 prior therapies for Recorsa in which we treated approximately 50 patients, and we have 2 trials there in the middle with the stars indicating the fast-track designations that are currently enrolling. So we feel like both of our programs, oncology and diabetes, are bridging significant gaps in current medicine and helping patients that have limited treatment options. For our oncology programs, we're focusing on lung cancer, which kills about 1.8 million people per year. And both of the clinical trials, as I mentioned, are partnering with top-selling drugs, one of which a targeted therapy of Tagrisso, marketed by AstraZeneca, and the other is Merck's immunotherapy Keytruda. Now, the interesting fact about these drugs is that most of the patients that take them, their cancer ends up progressing at some point or another. And so each of our clinical trials is designed to work with patients who have taken these drugs, they're no longer benefiting from them, and we reintroduce Recorsa into the regimen with them, giving both Keytruda and Tagrisso additional life. On our diabetes program, this is in preclinical development. It's focused on type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Diabetes impacts 37 million people worldwide, and it's a really interesting therapy approach that could potentially eliminate the need for insulin daily. Got to jump into our oncology program. And I may skip a few slides throughout here just in the interest of time. So our lead program is around non-small cell lung cancer, which represents about 84% of the lung cancer market. 2 million worldwide cases, 1.8 million die of it each year, and 236,000 new cases of lung cancer per year. Tagrisso and Keytruda are the largest selling drugs in their respected areas for targeted and immunotherapies, representing about $22 billion a year, and we are targeting our trials in combination with them. Now, a key aspect that we believe is an advantage for us is that we don't look at AstraZeneca or Merck as a competitor at all. In fact, we actually look at them as complementary. We believe that we would be giving their drugs extra life in patients that no longer are responding to them. And so I think it's a pretty significant competitive advantage of ours. This is our three-stool platform that we talk about for Oncoprex that, as I mentioned, we can use multiple tumor suppressor genes, has multiple synergies, and we can target multiple cancers. So the potential for products in our pipeline down the road is significant. This is our Oncoprex nanoparticle system. It is a non-viral delivery mechanism that consists of a positively charged lipid nanoparticle. Inside that is a DNA plasmid. In the case of Recorsa, we are using TUSC2, a tumor suppressor gene. This image here shows the uptake of Recorsa to cancer cells. The blue is the baseline biopsy. The red stains indicate the post-treatment biopsies, which TUSC2 is uptaken by cancer cells 33-fold. I'm going to skip these two slides. So this is some data on our first clinical trial for Recorsa in which it was explored as a monotherapy. The endpoints here were exploring toxicity and tolerability in patients. 23 patients were evaluable. This happened back in 2012. And the key point here is that we established that it was well tolerated in patients. This was our second clinical trial where Recorsa was tested in combination with Tarceva. Tarceva is owned by Genentech. We went through a phase 1 clinical trial and then also partially through a phase 2 clinical trial. This is preliminary data from that phase 2 clinical trial. We had 7 out of 9 evaluable patients that had slowed tumor progression, which is a 78% disease response rate. And we had 1 complete response in this trial. One of the things I'd like to highlight on this slide specifically is the number of prior lines of therapy that each of the patients had. Some of them had as many as 6 prior lines of therapy before receiving our therapy and still showed measurable response. This is another really interesting chart that I just don't have enough time to explain, but essentially this is showing all of the patients that had experienced some either stable disease or a complete response in our Tarceva trial, either phase 1 or phase 2, and it shows how long they actually stayed on our trial, with some patients lasting as long as 30 weeks, which in the case of stage 4 lung cancer patients is significant time. So we opted to move away from our Tarceva study in the middle of it, no longer enrolling, because Tagrisso had overtaken the first-line treatment therapy for EGFR-positive mutations. And this is the compelling data that we use to support our currently enrolling trial of Recorsa plus Tagrisso. And what we found was that combining the two had a positive effect on them together, much more greater than they did individually. As a result, we designed the ACCLAIM-1 clinical trial around this. As I mentioned before, this does have a FDA Fast Track designation associated with it. It's currently enrolling. We've dosed our first patient, and we expect to complete the phase 1 portion by the end of this year. We're going to have approximately 15 U.S. sites and take in about 92 patients. Here's a little bit more detail on the ACCLAIM-1 trial related to the phase 1 and phase 2 component, and I can let you guys review that on your own, or we can talk about any questions you might have later on that. Additionally, we've shown that Recorsa has synergy with immunotherapies. This specific preclinical data is showing TUSC2 with anti-PD-1 or Keytruda, showing that survival of lung metastases in mice was expanded in combination with the two. Additional preclinical information on Recorsa with Keytruda. We have additional data that we put out this year at AACR, or 2021, excuse me, showing that Recorsa may also benefit the second-line therapy of Keytruda plus chemo combination. So this is something that we are testing against in our ACCLAIM-2 trial as the control arm. So ACCLAIM-2 is our clinical trial taking Recorsa and combining it with Keytruda for non-small cell lung cancer. Again, this also has FDA Fast Track designation. We're looking at approximately 10 to 15 U.S. sites. We'll enroll about 156 patients. Site is currently open for enrollment right now. We're expecting to complete the phase 1 portion of this study by Q1 2023. These are the details on the phase 1 and phase 2 approaches. So over the last couple years, given that Recorsa is a novel gene therapy, a systemic gene therapy, non-viral, we've focused intensely on scaling up our manufacturing processes and optimizing them, which we've made significant contributions to in the last year. Recently, we announced that we are expanding Recorsa into small cell lung cancer. As I mentioned earlier, non-small cell lung cancer represents about 84% of all lung cancers. The other 15-ish% is in small cell lung cancer. We have some preclinical data to show this, and small cell lung cancer consistently has low TUSC2 protein levels, which is the key ingredient in our Recorsa drug. Talk a little bit about our diabetes program. This program is still in its preclinical phase. We licensed our diabetes technology from the University of Pittsburgh and have a collaboration with them to expand it forward. This program specifically is targeting both type 1 and type 2 diabetes and potentially holds the ability to reduce the daily frequency and need of insulin. The way that this program will potentially work is using an endoscope. Genes are injected directly into the pancreas, whereby they take alpha cells and convert them into beta-like cells, which produce insulin. And this slide describes that. Phase 1 clinical trial, if and when we get it launched, would be the first ever gene therapy tested in humans for diabetes. We've had some pretty significant milestones over 2021 and 2022, enrolling both clinical trials and dosing our first patient. We expect to have the first patient for our ACCLAIM-2 clinical trial dosed this month. And then we are expecting to file a protocol for Recorsa and small cell lung cancer sometime this year. Here are a few targeted therapy company valuations. I typically don't like to say that these are comparable to us because most targeted therapies are using a completely different approach than us. I mean, we are focused on bringing a non-viral targeted therapy to mass markets where a lot of targeted therapies are really trying to hit niche patient populations. So one of the key elements to our team, which I think is really significant, is just the add-on of several seasoned executives that we've included in the last 2 years. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I've been with the company since its founding in 2009. Same with our Chairman and CEO, Rodney Varner. In the last 2 years, we also brought on Catherine Vaxey, who is a seasoned veteran in GC and who has been with several cell therapy and oncology companies, including going through several exits with them. Our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Mark Berger, is 25 years oncologist who's taken a few different drugs from early stages to FDA approval. We also have a seasoned licensing veteran that we have added to our team, which is crucial as we build out our IP portfolio. As I mentioned, we have the ability to expand to a number of different tumor suppressors as well as different cancer indications, so IP is incredibly important to us. And then lastly, we brought on Hemant Kumar last year, recognized in gene therapy manufacturing, to help us optimize and build out our manufacturing capabilities for future scale. We have a very strong scientific advisory board with significant experience in lung cancer internationally. Jack Roth is the founder of our Recorsa technology from MD Anderson, and he's worked on lung cancer his entire career. We have a strong clinical advisory board and board of directors, and one thing I would mention just in our board of directors, our co-founder and strategic advisor to the board, Dr. James Rothman, won the 2013 Nobel Prize in Medicine. So in summary, we believe that we're bringing gene therapies up to 21st century technology, essentially. We're hitting large markets with unmet medical needs that are just currently being underserved. Our combinational trials are with the top-selling drugs in their respected areas. As I mentioned, I think it's $22 billion a year in sales. And we have 2 fast-track designations that are backing up all of our science. We're constantly exploring new indications in preclinical research and potential partnerships with industry. So with that, I will wrap up and ask if there's any questions. Yes?
Can you please tell me a little bit more about your clinical trials for diabetes?
Sure. So the question was about talking more about our clinical trials with diabetes. We have not formed a clinical trial yet. Currently, everything in our diabetes research has been based on preclinical cell work. However, we would look to explore animal studies next before we go into humans. So animal studies being likely primates. We've not done primate studies yet, no. Yes?
So the courses, you said by Q1 2023, you'll be in, with the intent to complete the development of the clinical studies?
So for Recorsa, we have the 2 clinical trials, Acclaim 1 and Acclaim 2. Acclaim 1's with the targeted therapy Tagrisso. We expect to have the phase 1 portion of that study done by the end of this year. The phase 2 would start immediately thereafter. And then for the Keytruda combination, which is Acclaim 2, that study for the phase 1 portion would be expected to be completed by end of Q1 next year. And then the phase 2 would start thereafter.
What's the strength of your financial position to get you through Q1?
So as of December 31st, our cash position was $38.5 million. So we don't have the need this year. If you look at our financials from 2021, which our 10K was just out end of March, that shows a burn throughout that year of about 1.2 a month. And so our phase 1 portion of our trials, if we go back and look, we're only looking between 9 to 18 patients in the phase 1 portion for each of the trials. So until that gets established, we're not going to see significant ramp up on the clinical cost side as it relates to patients. Once we hit phase 2, we're looking at additional 70 to 90 patients per trial there, additional sites, and we will see a ramp in costs associated with those clinical stages. Anything else? All right. Thank you for your time.